Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes to all you beautiful people that are about to join us. In this new edition of Then and Now, we have a very special segment that is so dear to me. And I want to start this segment by pretty much, we all know the models. We know these beautiful faces that you see in the magazine and billboards and commercials and all that. But have you ever thought of the people behind the scene? Those are the ones that count, the ones that make it happen. And this segment, we named it the booking table. The booking table because the bookers, they're the ones who make the magic. And these two women that I'm about to introduce, oh boy, they have made countless careers for decades and decades. And true professionals, incredible women, I call them gals. And with no further ado, I want to introduce them, and I'm about to bring them on. Martha North and Elayne Bohary, two dear friends that I've had relations with for so many years. And let's get this party started, guys. And she should be joining us momentarily. God, I love that word, momentarily. And then we get Martha. Okay, Elayne has joined us. Let's see. Boom, there you are. Okay, you're here. Now let me get Martha
Okay.
on. And then we could get this party started. Where is Martha? Martha. There she is. Invite. And she should join us momentarily. By the way, Elayne, this is my new favorite word, momentarily.
Moment, yeah, well,
Hey,
we have everything's the moment.
There they are.
Hi, Martha.
hi, Elayne.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Hi,
two
Omar. Oh,
extraordinary women who have had incredible love for so many years. I have not seen either one of you for, I have no, I think I saw Elayne before. Martha, I have not
let's
seen.
not go there.
Yeah, let's not even go there because it's been a hot minute. And guys, thank you so much for joining. This episode is very dear to me, for deep in my heart, because people outside our industry, they don't realize that the models get all the glory and everybody knows their names and their shenanigans and their fame, but they don't know the people behind the scenes, the one that truly make it happen. And in this segment, we call it booking table because we, all three of us, come from a generation that when we got started in this industry, we had something called a booking table.
Yeah.
And I would like to start with asking each of you, let's start with Elayne. How did you get started on this journey as a booker, agent extraordinaire? How did it all begin for you?
I was an intern at Willyware. You remember Willyware?
Oh my God, Willie Smith, dear friend.
Yeah.
And
I was an
wow.
intern in the style department. So basically, I would do the Polaroids and record the clothes, and then Interview Magazine would come by. I would set up the racks. They would take, all I did is record, give them the clothes, go to set, pick up the clothes. But I was able to meet everybody. And Kate Lockworthy was there at the time. And she was friends with Nadia. There's two ways I got in. One was through a messenger who delivered the books, who works for Nadia. I met her there, and then she knew Kate, who I was working as an intern for. So the two worlds came together, and Nadia invited me to join her, and Kate let me go. So it was perfect.
It worked out perfect. How about you, Martha? How did you begin in this journey?
Well, my story is a bit different. I went to college. I went to RIT for photography. And then after leaving RIT, I was an assistant. And I was the person at photographers that the modeling agencies would call to see their guys, to have go-sees. And I remember Dan Dealey calling me and saying, can you see so and so? And then talking to him and him telling me that he was going on a scouting trip. And I was like, well, what is that? He said, well, I'm going to go to Paris and London and Milan and look for guys that I want to represent in New York. And I was like 19, 20 at the time, something like that. And I went, wait a minute. Someone's going to pay you to fly to Paris, Milan, and London and look for good looking guys. That's your job. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm making no money doing this. You know, I know photography. I have a very handsome boyfriend. I could do this. And then I could bring my cameras, you know, my camera and take pictures that I like for myself. So fast forward, you know, I get back from, you know, he gets back from his trip and we meet and, you know, I thought he would hire me right away. And he said, well, I need a second interview. And I remember saying to him, what would you need a second interview for? And at that point, he hired me. So I started working at Wilhelmina with Dan at the time. And I want to say about a year later, I wasn't going to Paris, London, and Milan. I was making appointments for models to see photographers. So I quit. I said, you know, and he was like after and we had some pretty good guys at the time, but it had just started and I said, you know, well, I'll come back because he kept calling saying, why don't you come back? Why don't you come back? I said, well, I'll come back when I get to go to Paris, London, and Milan. So that's how I started. So
Oh
that's what I did.
my goodness. Okay, that's
So
a
he hired me
great way.
back. I was
That's a,
in Massachusetts working in a camera store. It was pretty fun.
now, Elayne, question. Wait, this question is for both of you. Obviously, you guys remember the booking tables. You know, when we had charts.
Well, I do remember that when I started, you know, we wrote everything down in pencil and then you could erase it. And then when a job confirmed, you had the red crayon that you put a DEF down the chart. So I didn't know what to do on the weekend. So I would only because I still had jobs. I would I would Xerox the charts and take them home and put them on my magnet on my refrigerator in my little studio apartment. So I could keep track of things that were happening on the weekends because we didn't have computers.
No,
We did not have cell phones.
we did not.
What?
It was
Now,
Yeah,
all handwriting and memory.
yeah, and
I used to love charts. I love charts.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, computers obviously changed the whole game, but I still believe I'll take charts over computers anytime.
Me too. I still like to write things down.
Yeah, I do
Like,
too. Well, I'm not doing it anymore, so.
So wait, when you did this whole charting business, what did you use? Let's say Martha, for instance, what did you use? The red, green, yellow? What was your method?
Well, we had a different color on the bottom for every month. I'm sorry, was it every month? No, every week, excuse me. And it was sort of like the charts didn't spin around on a table, which was later. This was sort of against the wall and it slid back and forth. And then you had different slots for the different models. So the green week was one week and then it was red and then it was blue. So you could tell a month ahead. And that's kind of how we did it. And each model had, you know, a long kind of vertical chart with their name on it. And I remember Christmas time when we were closed, which was the only time we really were, we'd all have to take home different charts. You know,
yep.
'cause some vacation.
Okay, I never heard of that one because I mean I remember just the round table.
No,
We had red. Okay, red was booked out. No, red was booked out. Green was confirmed. Yellow was a tentative.
right. But
We,
this was so you could tell which week it was. This wasn't, you know, definite or tentative or things like that. This was so that when you looked on the table, you could see a whole month at a time. Does that make any sense?
interesting. Now that's interesting. Now tell me, see if you could share a story. I want to have some fun on this. Tell me a funny story about a model coming in, and because I remember a model would come in and say, "Hey, can I look at my chart?" And tell me like a funny story that you ever encountered with one of your models coming in, trying to look at the chart and coming up with some just crazy comments about their charts. Do you have anything that stands out in your
I'm
head?
blank on this one, Elayne.
You know what?
Most of
I don't because when the models would come in to look at their charts, it was so serious. Like there was nothing funny about it because they
Yeah, it
really
was
walked
work.
down and say, okay,
You
what
know,
am I doing? You'd be right on top of each other because you'd have this, like legal size paper, right, on a clipboard, basically. And so you would have to go over each thing with them that was written really tiny because we had little spots for everything we needed to write because we had to write everything in these little boxes, basically.
Of course.
And then papers when you had more notes. So it was never fun. It was always
right?
very
It was
serious
work. I mean,
work. Yeah.
I remember, they would come in and at the time we gave everybody a calendar, a diary every year.
I
Mm-hmm.
remember.
So they would have their diaries, and you would say, "Okay, get out your crayon. Let's go over your schedule." It was more like that.
Now, so, remember the diaries. I still have diaries, by the way. I keep diaries. I write down
Right, but we
everything.
gave them as gifts every year to the guys. It'd
I,
say Wilhelmina on it, or whatever agency it
yeah,
was.
I remember that, and I still have those. I mean, I have agendas back to 1978.
Oh,
Believe
wow.
it or
I think I do too.
yeah, I guess because I'm a Virgo, I guess, and I keep everything. So I love to go back once in a while. I go to my storage and I open them and I go, oh my goodness, Tell me, share with me a story, and I'll get it started. I'll tell you a very funny story. I recall one time sending a model to Paris, and he showed up to Paris. He's supposed to be on a booking, and he actually went out there with his surfboard, and he showed up at the agency asking, "Where's the beach?" And well, what do you mean, where's the beach? You came here to work. Oh, there's no beach. He actually turned around and came right back to Los Angeles.
Wow.
Tell me like a crazy story from one of those
Mm-hmm.
models back in those days that is still in your mind that, oh my God, I
Right,
remember
I
what he
I
told
got
me.
one, but I don't know if I would call it crazy, and I'm not going to say who it
No,
was.
no,
But
don't.
at the time, we represented some really busy, working, incredibly good-looking guys that. Anyway, I got pregnant. I was married, I got pregnant, and I'll never forget one of the guys came in and I was telling people, I'm pregnant, I'm going to, go on maternity leave, whatever. And the response was, "How could you do this to me?" And I like looked at this guy and said, without skipping a beat, "I do not remember you in the room when I conceived." That's kind of like, we were women in this men's sort of world. And it was like working on one hand in a locker room. We weren't their mothers, we weren't their girlfriends, we weren't really their friends, although for some of them we were. But comments like that were just like astounding. I mean, that actually happened. And then of course I got an apology, but it was just sort of the audacity of it. It wasn't
That's,
particularly funny, but because back then, we didn't get a lot of maternity leave. I mean, I was only gone for I think 8 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, probably
But anyway,
8 max. Yeah.
yeah, that was the first
Yeah.
one. My second child was
Elayne,
longer.
tell me a funny story that you had that is fresh in your mind.
Oh my goodness, there's so many. I mean, I think not like just maybe just related to some of the guys and just like how funny they were. Like I remember going once to the Hard Rock Cafe with a male model, and he ordered blackened chicken. Like so it had the and it came and we sit down. It was maybe like two agents. I think it was him and his girlfriend. And the waiter serves us, and he looks up to the waiter and he said, "Why is this burnt?" And the waiter's like, "No, it's blackened chicken. That's how it's." No, it's. And he caused this big scene, and I'll never forget it. It was on 57th Street. Like sometimes just how people came from little towns and then come to New York, and they just weren't like they just didn't understand where they were or what was going on around them. It was endearing, sometimes embarrassing, but also like it was our job to like teach them these things and mentor them. So when they go out with clients, they understand when they're ordering something off a menu, they just have to accept what they get and not argue the way it's prepared because they didn't, it was stupid stuff like that I remember.
No, that's a good one. Now, tell me about the process. There was a process that we actually did that I don't believe it's practiced that much these days, but making ghosties. Getting
Oh,
on the phone
that.
and making, how
I
did you go
hated
about
that.
that process?
Ah,
I mean, for me, it was one of those things. I came from a background of photography, and I really respected the photographer and working with them and all of that. But the idea of calling someone, I mean, I was on the receiving end of that call, working at photo studios. But the idea of calling and saying, I have this really handsome guy in town, that was just not something that I ever enjoyed doing. Because if there was somebody that we thought was right for a photographer, that this was the kind of person they would like, that was easy. But, if you didn't know, just to sort of be on the low person on the totem pole, those were usually the ones that had to do the go-sees.
mm-hmm.
That's I think why I quit. That's I think why I quit the first time, was because it was not something that was ever particularly comfortable. I mean, I love dealing with the models. I love dealing with the photographers most, and I love the negotiation and the contracts and all of those things. But cold calling people, no.
How about
Elaine
yourself,
will tell
Elayne?
you.
Well,
Elaine and I work together.
I still do it, so it still exists.
Oh God.
You know, yeah, that's a tough one because, clients don't want to see every single talent that you represent. But it's our job to push these clients, beg these clients, force talent down their throats, because otherwise they're just going to sit there and not know who's out there either, unless they see someone on the runway. There's tons more models. So not the funnest part of the job, but still, from the minute I started until I retire, I'll still be making go-sees,
And I think that, I mean, that's something that I see that it's diminishing because a lot of people don't want to see
Well,
anyone.
since
Um,
COVID, they don't want so many people in the
especially
office.
since
Yeah.
COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But tell me how you see like the difference between then and now when it comes to putting your models in front of people. Like, how do you go about that process these days? How do you see
Mm-hmm.
the difference? Because now everything is online,
Yeah.
and you barely get to do ghosties anymore because nobody wants to see anyone, And we all come from that era where we got on the phone and we hustle, we cold call people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we get rude studio managers who would like, I don't work with your agency, click.
Yeah.
I used to get that when I first joined this industry a lot. I mean, Jesus, send a package,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
We did a lot of that. We sent a lot of messengers out with, with cards. I mean, that was always a little bit easier for me because I could write a note and then I could follow up saying, "Did you get this? I think these guys are right for you, and I think you'd like, to see them." That made it easier. I mean, back then, we had our own in-house messengers that were also working in the mailroom. So you would be like, so and so, can you bring this over, to Bill King's studio or wherever? And that was easier for me because it wasn't just calling. I mean, now people can go online and see. Back then, they had to see something in order to know what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of the first way that we did it. We also had these agency books that we sent out where the models had their headshots and 3 or 4 pictures. You remember those?
Of
you
course.
know so that there were those ways that you could say, okay, Todd Irvin or whoever is on this page or whatever, and then it would be easier for them to say, okay, I'll be happy to see them. But if they were new, they would usually have just a quick card that you would do, and you would send it. That's how I did it anyway,
Do,
when I
do
didn't
you
have to do.
remember? Do you guys remember head sheets?
Of course.
Oh yeah, the little tiny. They were little thumbnails. It was like contact sheets of all the guys.
Yeah.
We would send them with the books that we made, the agency book, so that people could tack the head sheets on the, not head sheets, but on their wall with all the different
Like,
models.
yeah. We had it where it was a fold out. So it was a
Exactly.
big poster with little body so they
Like
could, yeah.
yeah, like little thumbnails,
Yeah. Yeah.
just their headshot.
Now I used to love that question. Um, Part of the job, back in the days, I don't know about today because I mean portfolios no longer exist. But to you, I'd like to hear from you guys. What was the most exciting thing in terms of you book a model, your tear sheets come out. How did you go? How was your process of including that into a portfolio? Was portfolios something that you really took a liking to
See,
putting books together?
I loved that part because for me, and I'm sorry to jump in on this one, Elaine, but that was all about photographs, and it was how the photographs were run in a book, which sort of carries over in a way to what I do now. I love to photo edit. I love to look at pictures. I always have. And I always felt it was like really important to start out with a really good photo of you first, whether it was a GQ cover or whatever, and then kind of run the book and end strongly as well. So and I remember putting all the pictures on the floor and looking at them and putting them in order. I mean, I loved that part of it.
How about you, Elayne?
I agree. I loved it. I love nothing more than like putting those pictures all over the floor and walking around them and moving them like a gigantic puzzle. And then you'd gotta, you'd put it together and you'd grab a coworker and say, okay, what do you think? And they'd be like, no, I think you should switch this. And then you'd have these arguments about like how the book looked better. But it was so much fun. And also like every time someone got a new tear sheets, a cover, then you could like, you could call the clients like, hey, so-and-so is on the cover of this, or hey, so-and-so, I'm going to send the book over now. Like it was always a talking piece to the clients. And
Right.
so, it wasn't a cold call. It was like, I have great news.
I mean, it was their career.
Yeah.
Then how did you go?
Exciting.
What was your process when it came to cards? Because that's an interesting one because obviously you book a guy, he did a beautiful editorial. Out of that editorial, he probably had 2-3 great headshots or 3 great body shots. And you say, okay, this will make a great card. But then a month goes by and boom, like a cover comes out with like a big name photographer. And you're like, oh, shoot, we just did his card. Like, what do we do now? How did you
do a new one?
process?
Yep.
You do a new one. And for me, it wasn't about like necessarily a headshot. It was about a beautiful image. So, you would try to find the most beautiful image that someone would remember the next day. That kind of a picture, and that would be the front one. It wouldn't have to be, for me anyway, a headshot on the front of the card, but then you wouldn't try to put too many on the back. I found that the bigger the model, the less pictures you had to use,
Interesting. That makes a lot of sense. Because that
You didn't
happens
have
a
to
lot.
do 4 pictures on the back or a fold out card that went on and on forever. You could just do 1 picture and then type on the back kind of thing. We did that because, if you didn't know who this person was, then,
Yeah,
you didn't know,
exactly.
you didn't
What are you
know
doing?
your business.
Right.
How do you feel about that one, Elayne?
I mean, the same for me. I always liked 3. I never liked when it was 1 on the front and 4 in the back. I always thought it was just busy and messy. So I always liked a strong a strong front of how they really look. You know what I mean? Like that most looks like the real them. And then always on the back, like for the men, always a full length and definitely a body shot if they had a body, like show it. So yeah.
How do you navigate this industry through? Obviously we're in it's a whole different ball game. And how do you keep the quality of the images that? Because obviously we don't have portfolios anymore. It's now Instagram. That's the new portfolio. So how do you keep that quality control? How do you do that in this, in today's market? I'd like to hear your opinion. How do you feel about that? Because you're not with the model every day, and people are posting. With the new generation of posting, how do you keep that quality? Do you call them and say like, hey, take that down, that's not good, or like,
Yeah,
how do
you do have to guide. Most talent know. You know what I mean? They know. They go on Instagram, they see other talent, they see what they're doing, and they get an idea. If somebody is doing something that's just not working, or you feel like just isn't showing their best self, then they should have like some people want to promote something else that they're doing. you know, so that should be a different account.
So it's about their lifestyle now.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you feel about that, Martha?
I'm out of it. I mean, I don't mean that I'm out of it, I represent photographers now. So I haven't been a model agent in 15 years. So, I can
If you
only
need a model,
imagine that
Martha, what do you do?
I'm sorry.
If you need to book a model, what do you do?
Well, I don't really book models anymore.
Okay.
Usually I have a production company that works, the producers do that.
Gotcha.
I'm not, I'm the photographer's agent. So it's not, and it depends on the job, but it's not often that I am in a situation to do that. So Elayne can
Question.
better answer that one.
Did you or you do, like back in the days, did you enjoy having the models come over and hang out at the office?
I loved it.
How about you,
That's the
Elayne?
fun part of your job.
Yeah, I agree. And it was more, that doesn't happen as much as it used to, but you're promoting your talent, you're working with them, you're supporting them, and seeing them is so great, especially when you have so many models overseas that only come to New York a couple of times a year. It's fun to have them in the office. It's fun to hear,
Yeah.
what they're doing, what their goals are, what's changed. I mean, I love
Yeah,
seeing
me
people.
too. And some of them become real friends that I still have.
Okay, so
So,
I'm gonna go back. Oops, sorry. I'm going back to the go see. So if a client doesn't actually physically meet somebody in person, and when a client meets a talent, they fall in love with the personality, with their stories. You can't sell that on. You can't put that in a book. You don't even
yeah.
get it on Instagram. You know what I mean? So that one-on-one is just so important. So when people don't want to be talented, I'm always like, oh, they're missing so much.
I agree with that. I think you have to meet, because a lot of the difference between what is a good model and what made a model a really top model was their personality,
I agree.
and how they were on set. Our job was to get them in the door, and get them confirmed and booked and negotiate and do all that. But if they were an asshole once they got in there, that was it.
Yeah.
It wasn't often that would happen a second or a third time, at least not with the guys.
Mm-hmm.
Speak to me about agency camaraderie back in the days when you walk into the office, the camaraderie you had with your fellow bookers. Whether I mean, like I always had a good group with everyone that I've worked with. I never really had, like in your words, Martha, any assholes here and there. I really always had people that had good vibes, and I never called it a job. I always called it like, like people, oh, you go to work. It's like, no, it's not work for me. It's I'm going to this place where I hang out all day, and I love everyone there, and I love what I do. And the models come in, and we hang out, and we have a blast.
Well, I
How do you?
mean, like for most jobs, you spend an enormous part of your life there.
Yeah,
I spent more time during the day, certainly with Elayne, than I did my family.
yeah,
So of course you want to like the person you're sitting next to. I adored Elayne. Yeah, I still do. So I think that was, yeah, I think that was a real key element to making a table and an environment and an agency work.
yeah,
We all had different strengths. We all had different qualities. We all liked different guys that we worked with. It was, it had to fit.
yeah.
It wasn't just one person. It was a group. You were part of and I felt like that no matter how many years I'd been doing it. If somebody came in and they were, only doing it for a couple of years, you wanted them to feel as included.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I looked at it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't go to school to become an agent. There's absolutely no
No.
training. You get thrown in there and you sink or swim.
Yeah,
Personality.
I agree.
And agents have to have great personalities too. You want the clients to like you. You want other agencies in other markets to like you. You want to be fair. All of these things matter. So it matters who
It's
you have representing your agency and your models.
I just saw a comment said a booker's job was never over at 5 p.m.
Absolutely true.
I
No,
love that
what
comment
about
because I still
somebody?
believe that.
What if at the airport and they're landing somewhere and it's 5 in the morning here and their car isn't there or they lost the hotel information. I mean, there's, you always have to make sure that your talent can call you right for anything going on in their life. So it's
right.
a 24/7 job.
Right, but it was a little bit different when there weren't cell phones, because
Yeah.
it wasn't, they would have to call you on your house phone, which they had. So it wasn't as, you didn't have 24-hour access. They'd have to leave you a voicemail message on your answering machine. And then you could decide, is this really an emergency or do you just need directions to your house?
Yeah.
I
had one of my dearest friends in Old Booker. She's like my heart, Serene. She created, she had a jar of quarters in the office for the models so they can never have the excuse like, oh, I didn't have enough quarters
to call,
or to call
from a payphone.
Remember, we had only pay phones.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the amount of collect calls we had to accept.
Oh,
Yeah.
You remember that?
Especially when they were overseas.
Like,
I don't know how they managed to do it, but I have so and so collect from wherever, and you're like, okay, fine. Then you'd have to write it down because some of those calls could be a lot.
Yeah. Yes.
You know what? Half the people listening to this may have no idea what a collect call means.
Yeah. Just for you young people that are listening, that's when you call someone and you don't pay, they pay. That's basically what a collect call is.
I call you. Get somebody as an operator saying, yeah, I'm collect. Well, the funny thing was we had this system sometimes where they would call and they would say, it was like this code, so-and-so's calling, and I wouldn't accept the call. And then I would call them back.
Okay.
That was pretty good.
Let me ask you.
I remember that. But
because I recall I never really had like lunch breaks. Like I don't even remember like if I ever had lunch breaks. Like, oh, I'm going to lunch at 1, I'll be back at 2. Like,
oh no, lunch was fun. Lunch was when you took clients out.
Yeah.
No, I mean back then, lunch, of course you had lunch sometimes at your desk, but back then that was the way you met photographers and clients. You would take them to lunch. And sometimes if you had a model that, was unhappy at his agency and wanted to talk to you, you would take them to lunch. You would meet that way.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I liked going out to lunch.
Yeah. That's fun. How about you, Elayne?
I mean, I think the same. I mean, basically, we do eat lunch in the office a lot.
Yeah.
Still, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you go out for lunch, you're going out usually to meet a client,
right.
Talent, customer, usually, or it's not really like you just go out and take
nightlife.
No, yeah, no, you don't go out wandering or shopping or whatever.
Well, sometimes.
Let me hear about what happened after 5 o'clock. Were you very active after 5 o'clock in terms of the industry, going to a photo exhibit, a book opening, or new designer store that's opening? Was that part of your lifestyle back in those days?
I mean, for me, I'm sorry, Elayne, I keep jumping in. For me, I had a family pretty early, so it was important that I would go home at night and not really, I had people that worked with me that would do that. But if it was something that was really important, if it was a show or a designer or a dinner, of course, another agency in town from Europe or wherever, of course I would do that. But it was also important that I try to maintain, a balance of, my family as well.
How about you, Elayne?
I mean, it depends. Like, obviously, during Fashion Week, I wouldn't see my family for 2 weeks, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, depending upon whether or not I went straight on to Milan and Paris. So I think it's definitely seasonal. During shows, it's full on. Yeah. And I missed a lot of school events, traveling and going. I missed a lot of school events. You do miss a lot. But those.
I mean, that happened as well.
Like the shows would fall right around like the kids' graduation, like just these random time frames with things. But that's life. Yeah.
I mean, I remember being in Paris and getting a call from who was, you know, my au pair at the time, and my husband was home, and she just blurted out, you know, your daughter took her first steps today, and I was like, put Michael on the phone, you know. And then he said the nicest thing to me. He said, don't worry, when you get back, it'll be the first time for you. But so there were times when you just, you know, you did what you had to do, but I'll never forget that. You miss
Yeah.
things.
It's, you know, it's really amazing that all these years that we've been in this industry and we've seen the different changes, you know, the decades, you know, for myself, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and, you know, what it is today. Is there a something common that you see that has happened in all these years that it's still like, this is what works? Is there something that you believe it still works? What would that be? I mean, we used to be, oh, well, that person has a fantastic look, which
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, I don't know if that really applies in today's world because of social media and it's all about lifestyle and personalities. Photography wise, you know, having that incredible tear sheet by that incredible photographer that took your career from A to 100, you know, to Z. What is the common trend that you believe or think that is still, you know, relevant to today's industry? What would you think it is? I got you both on that
Okay.
one.
Okay. So
Well, that's an Elayne.
okay. So it's, you know, it's different. There's different ways to work. There's e-com, you know, there's having a more, you know, advertising, higher end. There's social media. So having that model look, you know what I mean, is still important. And we know what clients gravitate towards. You know, the same clients have been around since I started in the industry. You know, I'm still working with clients that I worked with in the 80s. So their you know, their brand and their aesthetics really haven't changed much. They've evolved, you know, as everything has.
Sure.
I would say I always think the most important thing is your relationships with your talent, that, you know, they trust you, you trust them, that everything is open, you know, and that you work collaborative, you know, you have a good collaboration, and with the clients as well.
I agree.
Because you know, the clients, yeah, a little bit they change, but I mean, Martha, if you walked into the office and like went through my computer, you would still know half the people I talk to on a weekly basis. You know, they really,
They
it's
stick
crazy.
around,
They stick around. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Martha, you were a tough cookie. I remember that.
She still is.
You were a tough cookie, boy,
I was
and a
fair.
phenomenal negotiator.
You could be tough, but you had to be fair because you had to have clients want to still work with you. So it's a fine line. If you're too tough and you're not fair, you're not gonna last. It is that fine line. But thank you.
Yeah, no, I remember many times you really, I mean, that's the one thing when your name came up, there was a certain level of respect and like, wow, Martha, you don't want to mess with her. You know, people like yourself and the Nadias, you're like, okay, you don't want to mess with them. Great negotiators,
Well,
always put their foot forward for their models. You really always put the model in front and protected
I
the
always
model.
felt like it was just as important who you said yes to, who you said no to. You know, and if you're an agent and you're managing someone's career, you don't just say yes. You know, and I think that maybe is perceived as tough, but you know, I never minded walking away from something that wasn't enough money or wasn't the right fit, you know,
Mhm.
or even, you know, if you had a model that at the same goes through with the models at the agency that you worked with. You know, if you got to a place where the model was no longer a good fit, I had no problem saying find someone else.
Wow. Okay. I love that. How about yourself, Elayne?
Yeah, I I was definitely not as tough as Martha. And Martha would like, oh my God, she would read a contract like this. You wouldn't even need when Martha was there, you didn't need a legal department. She could read it, you know, front and back in like 5 minutes and redline everything, which I always admired your brain for that.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it was easy because I just felt like if you were a client and you were handing, if you were Ralph Lauren or whoever you were, and you were giving me a contract to look at and to sign on behalf of a talent, and I didn't understand something, you had to explain it to me.
Mhm.
And you know, I'm willing to give you what you're paying for, but anything more, if I didn't get, I wanted to know why, you know.
Mhm.
And after a while, contracts really became, you know, pretty similar in what they would say in the paragraphs. And you learn this. And I like to read, so
You go. You do.
That's
here you go.
um,
And they're
that's
fun.
amazing.
They're fun to read. I mean, in a weird way, really weird way.
I'd rather like put together a book than read a contract.
Right? I mean, I was blessed because I had, you know, this book of Serene. She was like the Martha in my office. So she loved to read. She had a background in legal, you know, in the legal world. So she knew how to go through contracts and stuff. I was horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I
I'm
mean,
more
I
more
could get
visual.
the money, but all the legalities is like, oof, that's, you know, something different for me. Ladies, this has been amazing. I'm so blown away and so happy that I get to see you. Number one, I can't wait to come to New York to see you in the flesh and, you know, grab some coffee because it's been so many years. You both look beautiful.
Well,
I
thank you.
adore
You
you
look
both.
amazing too, Omar.
No, really, it's
Exactly,
like
you do. Very
I
handsome.
I feel so blessed to have said that, hey guys, I've known these women for so many years. We've always had an incredible mutual respect for each other. And your level of professionalism, what you've created and still creating in this industry and putting, you know, giving opportunities to young people out there to become part of this industry, it's remarkable. And I really want to thank you from the middle of my heart. I never say the bottom, I say the middle because it's
Oh,
I love
Omar, it's
it.
great to
Aw,
see you.
So thank you so much. I have to give thanks to the era management team who has put this together, and obviously our producer and creator Nadia, who
mhm.
we all know, Mama Nad. You know, thank you so much for giving us this platform for us to be able to share with people the ones who came before
Yeah.
and really created what's happening today. And that's ladies like you guys. So really, thank you from the middle of my heart. And we shall dance again very soon.
Okay.
I hope so.
I
Thank
send you
you.
my love.
Bye.
One love, girls.
One love.
Ciao.
Bye bye.